Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and unauthorized.tv. Tonight, among other things, we're going to talk about Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, and the art of negotiation. And you'll understand that it's actually connected a little bit to some of the stuff that we're talking about here with regards to the house cleaning and so forth. But welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Reprehensibles, to the Unauthorized, and to the Bears. So please excuse any background noise that you might hear. The resident metalhead, or one of them anyhow, is messing around with the guitar. So you may this directional mic supposedly does a very good job of keeping the noise out, but you may pick up a little bit of it in the background. Yeah, the lighting, I'm getting better at it. Trying to experiment and get some better results. You can probably see in the background we're getting an ASL campaign game set up there, so hopefully we'll get that underway in the next day or two here. But so a couple things before we get to the main topic of negotiation. I just announced that we're making a change with regards to the comic that we're delivering for the Callaghan campaign. There's going to be 12 issues of the Swan Knight Saga as planned, but we're going to do something different for the last 6 issues, the last omnibus. It's going to be something based on my Selenoth books. What exactly it is, we haven't decided yet. So if you have an opinion and you're a backer, please feel free to share it. Let's see. I'll get to the super chats later. But the other thing that I think that original Alt Hero backers will be pleased to know is that next week we are going to be delivering the first Alt Hero omnibus, Alt Hero Volume 1, which contains issues 1 through 6. We're going to be delivering the paperbacks and the hardcovers to the backers. We don't know exactly how long that process will take. We're also going to be making the hardcover and paperback available through normal channels, Amazon, Archaven Comics, Castelia Direct, etc. But the commercial version does not have the same cover as the limited edition hardcover. So very excited to show you guys that. These are the volumes that we were told were never going to happen, were never going to be released. And so very happy to prove those predictions incorrect. The lighting today is just, I finally have another lamp in my office. Got it set up so that we can play ASL, and so we're all good. Need to be able to see, especially with my middle-aged eyes. So trying to think if there's anything else that we need to hit. Not really, other than you guys are just absolutely crushing it on the unauthorized views. The watch time is up nearly 200% this month, so triple the amount of viewership from last month. So it's kind of amazing. Connor says he's going to have to buy the Jeeves and Wooster comic. You really should. It's really great. It's really quite good. I think you'll like it. But let's talk about negotiation now. I believe that Theresa May was actually attempting to achieve Brexit or not. But when you look at the way that she approached things. She threw away all of her leverage and accepted the frame of the other party. And needless to say, what did she get for it? Nothing. She failed completely. Whereas Boris Johnson just yesterday dropped a major bomb on the entire European Union when he said, quite correctly, oh, by the way, that 39 billion you were expecting us to pay, we're not paying it. Why should we? There's no reason for us to pay it. The nominal reason to pay that money was supposed to assist the European Union with the transition with the deal. But if there's no deal, they don't have to pay anything. And so that's why the European Union is suddenly panicking and saying, oh, well, yeah, maybe we can work this out, and maybe we can give you something on that. And suddenly they're discovering their own flexibility. And so what that tells you is that negotiation is all about leverage. And so it's always very important to not give away your leverage. You know, you can't just, there are certain people who, and I think women tend to be more prone to this when they're trying to get a deal done, but they're inclined to agree to throw away all their leverage in the hopes that they'll be rewarded by being by some sort of reciprocal agreement to do the same. That doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. And so the negotiation is in some ways a lot like war. Sun Tzu writes about the importance of knowing yourself and knowing your enemy. Well, in a negotiation, it's equally important to know both yourself, what you want, what you need, and what your negotiating partner wants and needs. See, I disagree with Mills Barrere. He says, never show your hand. But that doesn't work, because sometimes you do need to show your hand, because you can run into, like, you know, we obviously had a legal situation that most of you know about. And one of the problems that we had was that the other side had no idea what it was that we wanted. They didn't understand us at all. And in order to get to a point where we could even begin to reasonably discuss things, we needed to help them understand who we were and what we wanted. Did we show our hand? Yes, we did. Absolutely. Because it was necessary. It's not, you know, negotiation is not poker. There are similarities between poker and negotiation, but they're not the same thing. Because ultimately, the goal of a negotiation is to get to a point that both parties can agree to and ideally live with. A negotiation is not about trying to dictate your terms. That's not a negotiation. People who do that are not negotiating. If both sides just say, this is what you must do, that's an ultimatum. And an ultimatum is not negotiating. It's about understanding what the other party really needs, what they really care about. You know, and Boris understands that what the European Union really cares about, what they'd really like, is for Britain to not leave at all. And So that's why the Theresa May negotiations were never going to go anywhere, because she gave away all their leverage and suggested to them that by being incalcitrant, that would give the Remain forces the ability to throw out Brexit altogether. But that's why, and Boris understood this about the European Union. He understood that they really don't want them to leave, and that they don't, and he also understood that they don't respect democracy, they don't respect the British referendum vote, etc. And so he didn't really bother. He just went in there assuming that they're not serious about negotiating, so I don't need to waste my time on this. And he just said, we are preparing for a no-deal Brexit. If you want anything else, then you're going to have to give us something. You're going to have to stop with the ultimatums and the refusal to negotiate at all. And suddenly you see the crack in the wall. And then notice that he didn't, no, this is where he was right. He didn't show his hand right away. He didn't say that he's going to not pay them anything. He didn't say that right away. But he just pointed out, once no deal was being taken seriously for the first time, then he said, we're not going to pay you if there's no deal. So suddenly, the European Union has $39 billion worth of reason, 39 billion pounds actually, 39 billion reasons to be more reasonable. And so, and Donald Trump is doing much the same thing. Look at how he's handling the China situation. He knows he has a strong hand because he understands economics much better than the media, and much better than most of these idiot corporate CEOs who are not looking at the situation beyond their sales in the next quarter. Could a complete no-deal Brexit result in a full-scale war? Almost certainly not. The no-deal Brexit is not going to be a problem. You know, there'll be some bumps and perhaps even some bruises along the way, but it's not going to be very serious, because no-deal Brexit simply takes Europe back to the way that it was quite successfully for nearly all of its history. It's not an issue. It's not a problem. And so Boris knows that the EU has no leverage over them, so there's no reason for him to give ground on anything. You know, and that's why, you know, Boris is a good, perhaps even a very good negotiator. We'll have to wait and see. Trump, on the other hand, is a master negotiator. Trump is such a good negotiator that it may actually have a slightly negative effect on his potential as a president, because he wants to negotiate everything because he thinks he can negotiate everything. And he's not far from, you know, he may be mostly right in that, but not everything is a negotiation. You know, as Owen says, man cannot negotiate between God and the devil. Sometimes you just need to fight. But, you know, it's the old hammer nail problem. You know, people who believe in fighting, you know, they always want to fight even when they shouldn't. People who are master negotiators want to negotiate even when they shouldn't. But what's important is that Trump understands the situation. He understands there's literally nothing that China can do, because the trade deficit is such that any reaction that they have to his tariffs are going to strengthen his hand and strengthen the U.S. economy. So anyhow, uh, I do think that you would do well to pay attention to both the Chinese tariff negotiations that Trump is handling and the Brexit situation that Boris Johnson is handling, because what you're what you're witnessing is a pair of master classes in how to negotiate. Both of these guys intend to get some sort of deal done. But the best way to ensure that you get a deal that is to your liking is to be willing to accept the possibility of no deal. You always need to be, I don't think that you always need to hide your hand. I do think that you always need to be willing to walk away. And if you're not in a situation that you're willing to walk away, don't try to bluff. Again, it's not poker. You know, there are certain people out there who will absolutely call any bluff, just on principle. Magister Luda asks, how do you determine a deal breaker? Well, that's where you need to work out your priorities, and you need to work out what you really and truly care about. So, you know, what the EU cares about more than anything, and Boris Johnson knows it, is they want that 39 billion. They want that cash. As far as what Trump actually wants, Trump wants American manufacturing to come back from China. So you can usually tell what the other side really wants just by sufficient communication back and forth. What they're willing to give up, what they're not willing to give up, etc., etc. Jay Ramirez wishes me a belated happy birthday. Thank you, Jay. You know, a lot of, I mean, the thing is, I'm not saying that Boris Johnson is particularly trustworthy. I don't think so at all. I think that Boris Johnson sometimes doesn't know what he wants. But it's very clear that he is a very good politician, and he's obviously an excellent negotiator. What personality or class is least conducive to strong negotiations? Well, I think that people who are concerned with pleasing others, people who are submissive and concerned with pleasing others, are terrible negotiators. They either give nothing at all, or they give away the whole store. There doesn't seem to be much in between. I think gammas are very bad at negotiating. I suspect omegas are very bad at negotiating. I'm okay at negotiating. I'm not particularly good. I have a tendency to get what I want, but not get what I could have gotten. I don't tend to push it very hard, and I don't tend to care enough. Yeah, it is difficult sometimes to, you know, especially when there's a situation where, you know, the leverage changes, and then suddenly you have, you know, the opportunity to get more than you initially thought. It's very difficult to know where to draw a line, and that's why you just have to focus on what you want. You know, not worry about maximizing this, that, or the other thing. Just focus on what your original goal was. And this is why, for example, before I get involved in any negotiating process, I usually write down what I will be happy with before the discussions start. because that allows you to stay calm about it if things are going well, and it gives you an anchor to relate to if things are going poorly. So, true thoughts on Alex Jones. Why would I ever share my true thoughts about any other individual here? I mean, I like Alex, you know. I mean, I have nothing negative to say about the guy, you know. Um, but I'm not interested in stirring up internet drama with anybody. So, um, since the social sexual hierarchy involves negotiating, I guess Sigmas don't care enough to negotiate much. Well, one of the problems actually that I think both Sigmas and Alphas have is that I don't think we get enough practice negotiating. I don't think we get enough practice being reasonable. You know, we have a tendency to say my way or the highway and mean it. You know, especially in dating and romantic relationships. And so it's definitely a difficult transition when you put yourself in a position where that's no longer a legitimate or viable tactic, you know. And so suddenly you're having to learn that you can't just walk away from everything. And you know, for me that was a real challenge, and I don't think that I was particularly good at it. Good places in Europe to vacation. There's tons of good places in Europe to vacation. Italy, Spain, Greece. Let's see here. Jordan F says people are always attacking alphas. They don't have time to negotiate. No, but I mean they do. Well, they sort themselves out when they have intra-alpha relationships, but the thing is they're so hierarchical that they just do that almost automatically, which again is why they're not particularly good at negotiating. Let me get to some super chats here. Hans Laga says he's hooked on corrosion. That sounds like a really bizarre form of that old Hooked on Classics commercial, showing my age. Marie Goulet says, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you. Lineshare Logo says, heat of battle, being pulled 9 different ways. The pressure is extreme. A few elements to apply possess due to increased chances for success victory. Examples. I have no idea what you're talking about. Are you talking about negotiation, or are you talking about Entebbe? I mean, if you're talking about, or if you're talking about strategy games, I mean, the most important thing in any competition is to know the enemy. So recon is vital. Recon and research. That's always my first instinct. You know, if I'm preparing for a debate, I read everything that the other person's written. If I am preparing for a legal situation, I get as much information as I can about every single person who might have any say or influence in the decision. You know, you need to find out who their lawyers are, what they're good at, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in a fighting situation, then you need to know what sort of force do they have that they can bring to bear. Who has the advantage? what are those advantages? Where are the weaknesses? It's all about information. Try and Speak says, I understand you subscribe to the Nicene Creed. Can you elaborate on your issues with the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed? That's the later revision. I think that the addition, that especially as that relates to the Holy Spirit, is not necessarily justified from the Scripture. I think that you can conclude some of those things by a particular reading of the Scripture. I don't think that it is necessary. I don't think that the reading is an obvious or a conclusive one. And so, since it is a later addition, and since that later addition was perpetrated by a man who was not even a baptized Christian at the time, I am dubious about the changes. So I prefer the original Nicene Creed. But I don't quibble with those who prefer the latter. I do quibble with those who believe the latter is the original and claim that I am some sort of heretic or something because I subscribe to the original and only actual Nicene Creed. Muffhead says, are you familiar with Molinism, named after 16th century Spanish Jesuit theologian Luis de Molina, attempts to reconcile the providence of God with human free will? I've heard of it, but I know nothing about it. So if I do happen to read up on it at some point, I will let you know. Abraham Kim asks, hey Vox, what are your thoughts on Philip K's exegesis? I attend the same university that his papers and visions were at. It's trippy. I've read part of it. It is fascinating. I quite enjoyed the Valis trilogy, which is probably the closest thing to his exegesis in his published work. I mean, he's a madman. There's no question. But he was a brilliant and fascinating madman, so it's interesting to read. I wouldn't take anything that he says too terribly seriously. Marie says she heard this today. Fear is self-imposed spiritual malware. Pockets said that. I don't really agree with that. Some fear is self-imposed, but other fear is definitely imposed by external forces. Also, spiritual malware. I mean, there's a bit of a oxymoron there. Self-imposed spiritual malware. So you are imposing malware on yourself, but malware tends to be stuff that is done to you by an external party. So I think that is a nonsensical term that is attempting to sound profound. Someone is attempting to sound profound and has created a fundamentally self-contradictory term. Duralex Sedlex says, thoughts on the Trump administration getting Planned Parenthood to defund themselves? That's a typical Trump move. Trump's biggest gift, as far as I can tell, is his ability to get his opponents to rage quit. I mean, it's uncanny. You know, he points his finger and says something. He issues a tweet, and you know, his secret enemies unmask themselves. His open enemies give up and quit. It's astonishing. He's the best president that the United States has had since Andrew Jackson. And he's better than Andrew Jackson in some ways. It's just that he hasn't done anything yet that compares with Jackson getting rid of the Bank of the United States. Ukrainian Bear. Advice to a young Christian approaching their pastor who is cucking. What info question should I present that is most likely to make him think? I think that you should approach him in a spirit of humility and genuine questioning rather than approaching him as a self-appointed prosecutor. Remember, he is still a spiritual authority that you owe respect, if not, although not necessarily obedience, given what he's doing. So I think that the correct thing to do is ask him why he is taking those positions, and then explaining that you're asking him because you have doubts about the legitimacy of those opinions. Now, if he's honest, then you'll have a good, useful conversation and see what happens. If, as I suspect, he's a churchian or worse, a wolf in sheep's clothing, he's going to get angry with you and try to play the credential authority game. If he's going to do that, then you need to find a new pastor. Are Austrian economists right about anything? Yes, definitely. I mean, the Austrian business cycle, although the mechanism for it is incorrect, is generally correct. They're the only school of economics, other than Steve Keen, to pay attention to debt. So that alone makes them worthy of respect, more worthy of respect than most economists. You know, neoclassical economists ignores debt. That's insane. Victor Aponte says, thanks, Vox, for your words of wisdom. You're welcome. I'm not sure how wise they are, but I'm glad you find them to be of some utility. And we're caught up. What sort of economist are you, Vox? I thought you were Austrian. I am a Austrian heretic, I think is probably the best way to describe me. Would there be a government if there was no income tax? Of course there would. There were governments for thousands of years before the income tax was invented. How do you deal with an older gamma male who keeps questioning everything I do at work while CCing the boss in every email? I would just ignore him. You know, if you don't report to him, then you don't owe him an explanation. So don't bother. Is petty outrage a gamma tell? Yes, although it's not perfectly reliable. Anybody can have a bad day. No, this is incorrect. JKM says, Trump only looks like a genius because Republicans are so incompetent at fighting. Incompetent being the polite version, traitorous liars is more likely. No, Trump is a genius. What he does, speaking in very crude rhetorical terms and getting his enemies to expose themselves, is much, much harder than it looks. I couldn't do it. Most of the very smart people you know couldn't do it. You know, he and Big Bear are both interesting because they're both smart men who have the ability to speak as if they're not. And that's very, very hard to do. In fact, one of the correct criticisms of my writing is that all of my characters are intelligent. I have a very difficult time even writing a convincing portrayal of someone who is not seen by the reader as being highly intelligent. And that's a flaw. Yeah, Trump is talking down over 3 standard deviations. That's mind-boggling. Slammerai Jamdown says, money for the money lord. What? Do you have recommendations for a good laptop for game development? Uh, I don't even use a laptop, so no. I mean, all I would recommend if you're doing game, it depends on what kind of game dev you're doing. You don't waste a lot of money on an expensive GPU if you're going to be mostly you know doing mobile game development or strategy games or something. Um, you know, you want a lot of memory, and if you're the type of person who doesn't just sit at their desk, you probably want something that has good battery life. You don't need to go and get you don't need a game machine to do game development. What what has Trump done that's actually within his means? What could Trump do that's actually within his means to become the best president ever? Um, if he's actually doing what Q says he's doing, and what some people believe he's doing, then he will be the best president ever. If he breaks the power of the global pedos, he'll be the best president ever. If he shuts down NATO and brings the troops home, best president ever. There are a number of things he can do that are within his means. Now, obviously, we would like to see him completely drain the swamp and build the wall and repatriate all the illegals and a healthy proportion of the paper Americans. But that's probably not going to happen. It's not really in his wheelhouse, and it's not really who he is. You can't forget that Trump is a CivNat boomer. So he's going to do and say crazy CivNat boomer things. It's who he is. He's at his age, he's not going to change now. So just accept those things. The second term is going to be on fire. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he is working with a degree of difficulty that I don't think any president, with the possible exception of Ronald Reagan, has ever dealt with. Reagan was not as bold as Trump. On the other hand, he did actually get shot, so I imagine that had an effect. Magister Ludi adds, CivNat boomer, who thinks anything can be negotiated? Yeah, exactly. Do you think the UN would be involved in a one world order? Yes, of course. I mean, that's what it's designed to be. Any idea when 8chan will be back online? None whatsoever. I have literally nothing to do with 8chan. See, I wouldn't go that far. Blake McLeod says he has to do a lot quickly. There will never be a political outsider elected again. The algorithm of Google won't let it happen. They'll just bury it. You give them too much credit. A lot of things can happen for a lot of different reasons. Most of them factors that you have never imagined. Almost none of you back in, what was it, February 2015, believed that Donald Trump was going to be president. But when did I wasn't like the first one to do it, but I was among the first to. I think it was after South Carolina that I called it. Trump, South Carolina. Okay. Yeah, remember, actually, this is interesting. This was February 20th, 2016. It says, this is the open thread to discuss results in South Carolina and Nevada. Fox News is running a nonstop commercial for Ted Cruz in the last 30 minutes of the South Carolina polls being open. Doubt it will do them any good at this point, but it's good to know who the conservatives are pulling for now. Decision Desk has Trump winning at 32.8% with 40% reporting. The only question is how big he'll win it. So much for Trump being finished in Iowa. And I actually had an exchange with GOP establishment figure Rick Wilson. I was still on Twitter then. Rick Wilson said, anything less than 50% is a huge loss for Donald Trump. #SC primary. I said, you'd say anything short of collective mass suicide by the other candidates was a huge loss for Trump. Wilson says, LOL, grow a sense of humor, Vox. I said, so you didn't think the idea that the South Carolina mall shooter was a deranged Jeb Bush fan triggered by Trump's victory was funny? He said, I have no idea what you're on about. So, anyhow, but yeah, I mean, I knew after South Carolina that I was gonna I mean, I think I called it. Oh, here's another one back in December 2015, where I was pointing out that I thought that Trump was going to be the candidate and so forth. Anyhow, the thing is that the people who didn't see Trump coming are now saying he's our last and only chance. So there are others. Would Oprah win against Trump? No, of course not. Richard, you need to stop living in despair. Richard Walker says, if Trump gets reelected, I fear for his life. These globalists will try anything. People have been saying that about every president. You know? There have been... Why would you talk about that now? There have already been multiple attempts on Trump's life. I mean, there were open attempts right at his rallies. The guy jumped on stage and tried to stab him. So this whole I fear for this, I'm concerned for this. Don't give in to that crap. You know, you're just flirting with despair. It's not good for you. And it doesn't make you look, I'm not saying that Richard's doing this, but some people like to do that because they love to predict bad news. They love to be the storm crow. So yeah, see, this is wrong too. James also thinks that Trump will be the last Republican president because of immigration and demographic changes. I too at times fear that demographics will be the final nail in the coffin. That's stupid. And let me explain why. And also note that I'm the one who made this prediction that I'm about to discuss 12 years ago. The Republican Party is going to keep winning because the Republican Party is becoming the white party. So, yes, there's more immigration, there's more immigrants, there's more people of color, etc., and so forth. So what's happening? What's happening is that they're driving out all the white people. The Nancy Pelosi's, what's her name? There was a woman, before Omar became the congressman from Minnesota, she first upset a 44-year state senator. Some Jewish woman who was in a very, very liberal Minneapolis district. And Omar upset her. And I pointed out, I'd already predicted that this was going to happen. And so what's happening is that the people who are rising to power in the Democratic Party are going to be people of various color and immigration background or immigrant backgrounds who are way to the left of all of the traditional left liberal Democrats. And so that's going to drive away all the white people. And that means that the Republican Party is going to continue to get votes and is going to continue to win. This is why everybody's shrieking about how awful identity politics are and how white people shouldn't vote with identity politics in mind, because they know that it's all over at that point, and not in the way that everybody's predicting. What would the pushback be if Trump got whacked? It's hard to know. I would assume a military coup, to be honest. Oh, and such an attention whore. Grimlock says, when the U.S. splits up, what happens to military members? Well, I assume that most of them are going to side with whoever they're told to side with. Yo-Yo Bear says, this is happening in Canada as well. Leftist parties have abandoned traditional labor unions and workers. Exactly. Exactly. Transforming the Republicans into an actual right-wing nationalist party would be huge. Yeah, and it's happening. Why do you think that the establishment is creating things like the Edmund Burke Institute and talking about national conservatism and shrieking about identity politics and telling people that nationalists like me are horrible, terrible, very bad people who you should never ever listen to? It's because the trends are in our favor. The trends are working for us, finally. And so they're desperate to try to stop it. But it's not going to work, because everything that they've done is now coming back to haunt them. This is silly. Any 5-year-old can say that. What does it say? I missed that. It said something about the white identity being wrong. Okay, you're banned. It's not. It has nothing to do with wrong and right. That's what people like him don't understand. Is in any society that is multi-ethnic and multi-religious, all politics become identity politics. They just do. And that's coming straight out of the mouth of one of the most brilliant political minds in human history, the founder of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. He knew exactly what he was talking about. When the U.S. breaks up, do you see northern border states merging with Canadian provinces? No. The Canadians can't protect them. There's not enough people. And the Canadians are to the left of pretty much everybody but Minnesotans. The Minnesotans are about the only ones who actually could do that. But if you happen to know the Canadian border, like have spent any time in the boundary waters, as they're called, you realize there's no one living on either side of that border. So it's not going to happen there either. Alex Law says, hello, Vox. Much love. God bless you and your family. Thanks, Alex. And likewise. Vox, right to bear here. Love the stream. I went from this guy's a dick to this guy is awesome. Thanks. Yeah, apparently that's not an uncommon transition. My wife likes to remind me that pretty much all of her friends didn't like me at first. Um, and in fact, some of my good friends didn't like me at first. So I like to set a really low bar initially because it's just that much easier to clear over time or something. Vox, when do you predict the USA will break up into subnations? I predict that it will start in 2033. Carolina Swamp Fox Bear. Vox, I had my own SJW's Lie shirt made in black with the lettering. Hope that was okay. That's fine with me. I I appreciate the dedication. Minnesota is a mosquito powerhouse. Yeah, you have no idea. It's it's so bad. Ridgeback says Christians conquered the Roman Empire by being willing to be unpopular, go to prison, or die without compromising on the faith one iota. That is the only way you bring down global homo. Exactly. Obey God. Fear no evil. Speak the truth. Be faithful even unto death. If you do those things, God will reward you. Sunray says, my brother and I agree on everything except Vox. Breaks my heart. Hey, if you agree on that much, be happy. You don't need to agree on me. It's not only fine that people dislike me. I would say it's normal for people to dislike me. You know, I'm not a particularly likable person, and that's okay. Know thyself. Would Christianity have lasted? Yes. Become as widespread? Yes. And successful without Constantine? Yes. Let's see. Do you think patriots within the U.S. will come to terms with the destructive nature of civic nationalism in the near future? Yes. How do you become a member here or on Owen Stream? You can't become a member on Owen Streams because YouTube prohibits it. There's a join button. If you're signed in, there's a join button that you can become a channel member. And if you do, and those of you who are new members, remember, send me an email with your email address if you want to receive the notifications. YouTube does not give me your emails even when you become a member. Interface design flaw. So you have to email me and let me know that you're a member, and then I will send you the notifications before the streams. Let's see. A completely unpronounceable name sends $10 without a question, but thank you. I'm not going to try to butcher that. Vox, what are you currently reading? Well, let's see. I am currently reading something by Charles Dickens. I'm not even sure what the name of it is. I just sort of opened it up and let's see. Oh, I'm reading The Lazy Tour of Two Idle Apprentices by Charles Dickens. I just finished reading Hilaire Belloc's The Jews. And prior to that, I read Graham Allison's Destined for War. And remember, you have to log in on your computer. How long can you go without shaving before your mustache is ready to harvest? I don't know. I've never grown a mustache. This is within 2 days as long as it ever gets. So I will probably be clean shaven. Actually, I think I can guarantee I'll be clean shaven tomorrow. When are you going to post the Ohio, Indiana tour and ticket info? Hopefully this week. Why is nationalism preferable to tribalism? Because tribalism is not conducive to more complicated civilizations. There's a reason why a tribe like the Jews has never successfully created a full civilization. It's just too small. You need to have a larger selection of a larger group of people. That's, for civilizations, you need Christendom, you need China, you need, the Aztec Empire, that sort of thing. If a person happened to find a way to prove that a life without God can have no meaning, would it be wrong to take away the meaning from the lives of those who don't believe in God? Well, it all depends. Do you believe that it's right to kick the crutch out from a cripple? Yes, I have heard that the Southern Baptist Convention started to converge. It wasn't just this year. What's his name? The guy who is the head, Russell Moore, who's the head of the Southern Baptist Convention, he's a complete cuck. He should be excommunicated. What do you think about Wittgenstein? I think he was a beery swine. Bathory Bear had some Taco Bell and thought of me. That was very kind. How do we deal with leftists in countries like Australia? Leave them for the Chinese. Can we get a mustache emoji? What? No. Why would we need a mustache emoji? You sick freak. What of Ted Cruz? Oh, he's not a serious guy. He shouldn't even been permitted to run for president. He's not eligible. So I don't know, Owen. Shapiro needs those mustaches. Yeah, actually, I did promise people a Taco Bell emoji. We'll have to work on that. So, all right. Well, on that note, we'll see you next time. This week we should have Alt Hero Volume 1 out. We should also hopefully have news on Owen's big "You're Doing Great, Kid" tour. And if you're not subscribed to Unauthorized TV yet, I encourage you to do so. We believe the apps are coming sooner rather than later. We have reason to believe that. And for all of you who are already unauthorized subscribers, thank you so much and keep crushing. That's it for tonight. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.